Unaware his wife belonged to a secret billionaire family, husband abandoned his 9 months pregnant wife to starve for his wealthy boss. What she did next made him regret it forever. He didn't just abandon her. He walked out of their tiny apartment with a suitcase in his hand, Sabrina's perfume still clinging to his shirt, and left his 9 months pregnant wife standing alone beside an almost empty fridge, while he moved into his wealthy boss's home, chasing status that would never save him. That same night, Emily Parker's body finally gave in. She collapsed on her kitchen floor from hunger, weakness, and exhaustion. She had been surviving on tap water and stretching every last can of food to protect the baby inside her, while the man she loved was laughing in restaurants, drinking expensive wine, and letting another woman rest her hand on his arm. Her husband thought she was powerless. He thought she'd cut herself off from her distant parents for good, that she had no access to their money, no one she could call, no safety net left. He thought she would wait quietly while he built his new life. What he never imagined was this. The wife he abandoned to starve came from a secret billionaire family that had been respecting her, wished to live as an ordinary woman, but watching over her from a distance. A family with investigators, lawyers, and enough power to destroy every lie he built with one courtroom hearing. And when Emily opened her eyes in that private hospital suite, with her mother at her bedside, her father reviewing evidence, and photos of Aaron with Sabrina pulled up on a screen, something inside her changed forever. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you're watching without subscribing, it's like letting Emily's voice fade in the same silence she suffered alone. When you subscribe, you stand with every woman abandoned, every mother left behind, and every quiet soul planning the comeback they deserve. Please subscribe now and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Emily Parker froze in place as a sharp cramp tore through her swollen belly, forcing her hand to clamp the edge of the kitchen counter before she collapsed. Her breath hitched, her face pale, her other hand instinctively cradling the 9-month-old life inside her. For a moment, the tiny apartment blurred. The intensity hit her first, raw, sudden, uninvited, like her body warning her that time was running out. When the pain eased, she let out a trembling breath and whispered, "Just not yet, not alone." Emily was 31, soft-spoken, patient, the kind of woman who apologized when she wasn't wrong and smiled to avoid worrying others. Everything about her, her gentle eyes, her careful steps, her warm presence, felt like she had been crafted by life to love quietly. But today her quietness carried exhaustion. She lowered herself slowly into the small living room, the space glowing with the soft afternoon light. On the couch beside her sat a basket of tiny baby clothes she had been folding one by one. She lifted a pair of pale yellow booties, her fingers brushing over the fabric with a tenderness that belonged to women who loved deeply and without hesitation. She hummed to keep her nerves steady, but the sound trembled at the edges. Emily had once lived in a world where nothing trembled. Before she became Emily Parker, she had been Emily Hawthorne, the only daughter of a powerful, private, generational family whose last name alone opened doors. She grew up in gated estates, surrounded by staff who never forgot to bow, and parents who rarely forgot their meetings, but often forgot her birthdays. Her inheritance, shares in several companies, investments, trust funds, had been mapped out for her since birth. But when she turned 22, she had done something no one expected. She legally changed her last name, moved out of the Hawthorne estate, and signed papers that put her trust funds under strict conditions she couldn't touch without returning to that world. Her parents had begged her to at least keep an emergency card, an open line, some form of help. Emily said no. She didn't want a life where affection felt scheduled and conversations felt rehearsed. She wanted something real, something honest. And Aaron Parker had appeared exactly when she needed softness. He was 28 when they met, handsome in a boyish way, confident but not arrogant, ambitious but sweet. Or so she believed. He worked as a junior assistant for a wealthy businessman and made Emily laugh with effortless charm. He called her bright eyes and told her she made the world look softer. He never pushed about her past. When she said she was estranged from strict parents and preferred not to talk about them, he didn't ask more. He only knew her as Emily Parker, a woman who wanted a simple life. She ran from the wealth she once knew with open arms and a full heart, choosing Aaron and a small rented apartment over the cold luxury of her childhood. She traded marble floors for cheap wooden ones, staff for silence, and formal dinners for home-cooked meals she made with love. Yes, she had walked away from everything that could have made life easy, but she believed she had gained something far better, a home built on love. Now folding baby clothes alone in a dim apartment, she wondered if she had been wrong. Her eyes drifted across the room until they landed on a framed picture resting on the small bookshelf. It showed her standing between two elegant older people, her parents. The tension in her shoulders tightened. She reached out, touched the frame, as though greeting a stranger, and then quickly set it face down again. Her fingertips brushed the drawer below the shelf. Inside lay a single envelope from her mother, the last attempt her family made to reach her 2 years ago, forwarded by an old friend who still knew where she lived. In delicate handwriting, the front read, "Open when you're ready." Inside, Emily knew, was not money, but contact details, a private number, an offer of help if she ever changed her mind. Emily had never been ready. She pushed up slowly, returning to the basket of clothes. The delicate fabrics brought her comfort. She traced each seam, imagining tiny hands, tiny feet, tiny breaths. The baby was the one thing that kept her steady, gave her purpose, made the loneliness bearable. She tried not to think about Aaron, but the truth pressed against her chest. She was 9 months pregnant. She was alone, and her husband hadn't come home in 2 days. He had left with the excuse of work, the same excuse that had become his shield, his weapon, his favorite escape. His boss demanded more hours, more loyalty, more availability. And lately, Aaron had started pleasing that boss far more than caring for his own wife. Emily paused mid-fold, her hands trembling again. Not from contraction this time, but from the slow, painful understanding that she might not matter to him the way she once believed. A sudden throb pulsed in her stomach again. She winced, gripping the arm of the couch. "Please." "Not yet," she whispered, breath shallow. "He's not home." The pain eased, but fear lingered, heavy and cold. At that moment, a soft buzzing came from the kitchen table. Aaron's company phone vibrating where he had forgotten it 2 nights ago. His personal phone, the one he used to text her, working late, was with him. But this one, the office line, had been left behind, face down beside a glass of water. Emily stared at it, a cold chill settling over her spine. Something told her that whatever was on that phone would hurt far more than the contractions. And as she reached for it slowly, the pain inside her belly tightened again. Another warning, another countdown. She didn't know it yet, but the messages and missed calls on that forgotten phone were tied to the long nights he'd been spending in rooms she had never seen, with people who never even knew she existed. A quiet shadow passed through her thoughts, whispering that Aaron's world was about to reveal itself piece by devastating piece. Aaron Parker slammed the heavy office door behind him so hard the glass trembled. His breath came in tight bursts, anger flashing across his face. Moments earlier, his boss, Mr. Leonard Dalton, had publicly humiliated another employee for not meeting expectations. Aaron had watched the entire scene from the back of the room, sweat on his palms, fear tightening around his ribs like a vice. And now that fear pulsed inside him, driving him into a state he barely recognized. This was how things had been for months now. Long hours, sharp words, and the constant threat of being the next one crushed. Mr. Dalton was a man in his mid-50s with sharp eyes, expensive taste, and a talent for breaking those who disappointed him. He owned 3 companies, 4 luxury cars, and carried himself like nothing in the world could touch him. The office worshipped him. Aaron worshipped him too, though he would never dare say it out loud. He wanted Dalton's approval the way some men wanted oxygen. Inside the private lounge, a place only select employees were allowed, Aaron stood still, shoulders tense. His heart pounded with a mix of excitement and terror. The room smelled of leather and expensive cologne, and gold decor gleamed from every corner. It was wealth wrapped in luxury, the kind Aaron had never tasted at any point in his life. Mr. Dalton sat on a velvet sofa, a glass of dark liquor in hand, speaking with practiced confidence. Beside him lounged Sabrina Hayes, a striking woman in her late 20s, long dark hair, red lips, and a smile that could cut. She worked as Dalton's consultant, though everyone in the building understood her true role, his mistress and silent enforcer of influence. She leaned against Dalton with casual possession, her hand resting lightly on his knee. Sabrina noticed Aaron the moment he entered. Her eyes traveled from his rumpled shirt to his nervous posture, and a hint of amusement crossed her face. Dalton smirked. "Come in, Aaron. You look like you just watched someone get crushed. Sit." Aaron obeyed quickly. Dalton raised his glass and said, "This is what success looks like, son. Comfort, options, power." He gestured to the room around him, and then to Sabrina. "And the right company." Sabrina crossed one leg over the other, deliberately slow. "Mr. Dalton was just telling me about the new position opening soon. A position for someone loyal." Aaron's breath caught. A promotion, a real one. The kind that came with prestige and financial security. The kind that could make him feel like a man who mattered. Not just a man scrambling to pay rent and baby expenses. Dalton continued, voice steady and cutting. "But men who rise don't drag dead weight with them." Aaron flinched. The words hit him deeper than Dalton realized. Or maybe Dalton knew exactly where to aim. Because Aaron had always come from nothing. He had grown up in an average family, struggled through average jobs, lived an average life. He had married for love, yes. But sometimes love felt heavy. Bills felt heavier. With a baby on the way and Emily on unpaid leave from her job, the weight on his shoulders felt suffocating. Dalton took a slow drink. "Your wife is, what, 9 months along now?" Aaron nodded stiffly. Sabrina laughed softly. "So much responsibility. That must be exhausting." Aaron didn't respond, but the seed planted itself in his thoughts. Small, poisonous, growing. Dalton leaned forward. "A man's value is judged by how high he can climb. If you want real success, Aaron, you must learn how to prioritize." Aaron swallowed, throat tight. He saw in quick flashes memories of his early marriage. Him kissing Emily's forehead every morning before work. Her smiling as she packed his lunch. Late-night dreams about a simple home, a safe life, a family built from love. But the warmth of those memories was drowned out by the glitter surrounding him now. Luxury, approval, status, everything he felt he deserved, yet never had. Sabrina moved closer, her voice smooth as silk. "You'd go far if you weren't tied down." Aaron's breath froze. She touched his sleeve lightly. Just enough for him to feel the suggestion, the temptation, the promise of a life where he wasn't struggling to be enough. Her words echoed in his ears. Tied down. His wife, his unborn child, the cramped apartment, the unpaid bills stacked in the kitchen drawer. The life he once wanted suddenly felt like a chain he couldn't escape. Aaron folded his hands tightly, trying to hide the tremor in them. Dalton smirked knowingly. "Think about what you want, Aaron. Men like me recognize ambition." And in that moment, something in Aaron shifted, quietly, dangerously. The man who once dreamed of a loving home was pushed aside by someone who wanted to climb, no matter what he had to leave behind. Sabrina leaned closer, her lips near his ear. "You don't have to stay ordinary." A chill ran down Aaron's spine. Outside the lounge door, unseen by all of them, Mr. Dalton's assistant slipped a folder into the office mailbox. Formal documents for a special assignment. A new role, higher pay, and an invitation to move into Dalton's guest wing so he could be close to work. Documents that would soon push Aaron even deeper into his transformation. Emily jerked awake to the sound of a plate shattering. Her heart pounded, her breath sharp. For one terrifying moment, she thought something terrible had happened to the baby. But no, the pain inside her chest wasn't physical. It was emotional. The plate had slipped from her trembling hands and crashed onto the floor. On the table beside her sat a full dinner. Her effort, her love, her hope, now cold, untouched, and waiting for a man who wasn't coming home. Her phone buzzed again. She already knew what it would say. Aaron, on her screen, working late. "Don't wait up." The words cut her deeper every time. She read them again as if they might change. As if this time he might add, "I miss you. I love you. I'm coming home soon." But the message stayed short, cold, empty, like a door shutting in her heart. Emily lowered herself into the chair, one hand on her belly, one hand covering her face. The silence in the apartment pressed on her like a weight. Even the clock ticked louder, reminding her of every minute she spent alone. She whispered to herself, "You said I was enough." Her voice broke. For a moment she let the tears come, quiet, tired tears that soaked into her palms. She didn't cry loudly. She never did. Emily had learned as a child that loud emotions had no place in a mansion filled with people who cared about appearances more than feelings. Her mind drifted into a memory, a flashback painted in soft gold and cold edges. She saw herself as a young girl, walking through endless hallways of her parents' grand estate. The walls were covered with expensive art, crystal chandeliers hung from the ceilings, and her footsteps echoed because there was no one around to answer them. She remembered trying to show her mother a drawing she had made. Her mother had smiled politely, nodded, and said, "Beautiful, darling," without looking up from her phone. Her father had patted her head as if she were a guest child visiting, then returned to his business calls. Love had been present in the house, but it had been distant, present only in words, not actions. Emily didn't want that life. She didn't want emptiness wrapped in gold. She wanted a hand to hold, a voice to reassure her, a partner who saw her as more than an accessory. So she chose Aaron. She chose simple walls, simple meals, simple dreams. She chose a man who once held her as if she were the only thing in the world that mattered. But now those memories felt like stories from another lifetime. Aaron came home less, smiled less, touched her less. He had become someone she barely recognized, someone distracted, ambitious, hungry for something she could not name. She lifted her phone again, staring at the message. Working late. The lie stung not because he said it, but because he didn't even try to hide how often he used it anymore. She placed a hand on her belly and whispered gently, "It's okay, Mommy's here. I'll keep us safe." Her stomach tightened again, not a full contraction, but enough to remind her that she couldn't afford to break down. She needed rest, she needed strength, and she needed— The thought vanished. The doorbell rang. Emily froze. Hope flickered in her eyes for one foolish second. Aaron. Did he surprise her? Did he come home after all? She pushed herself up, one hand gripping the table for support. She walked slowly to the door, heart trembling with a mix of fear and longing. She opened it. It wasn't Aaron. It was Mrs. Turner, the kind elderly neighbor from across the hall. She held 2 bags of groceries in her hands, her warm, concerned eyes scanning Emily instantly. "Sweetheart, you didn't answer your phone. I called twice," she said, her voice soft but urgent. "I heard a plate break. I was worried. You need food. You need help." Emily forced a tiny smile. Shame and gratitude blended painfully in her chest. "I'm okay," Emily whispered automatically. Mrs. Turner shook her head. "No, you're not. I know what an empty fridge sounds like when someone keeps opening it and closing it." Emily's eyes dropped to the grocery bags. Pasta, bread, fruit, soup. Basic things. Essential things. Things her husband should have brought home. "I can pay you back when Aaron's next paycheck comes in," Emily murmured. Mrs. Turner's face softened. "You'll pay me back by staying alive to raise that baby. That's enough." Emily stepped aside to let the neighbor in, her heart tightening, not from the baby, not from pain, but from the realization that strangers cared more for her than the man she had married. As Mrs. Turner set the groceries down and filled a few shelves, she spoke gently. "If you ever need to call anyone, use my phone, okay? Or the emergency number on your fridge. Don't sit here alone." Emily nodded. But her eyes slipped away from the fridge magnets and landed, for a brief second, on the drawer where her mother's sealed envelope lay hidden. She quickly looked away. As Mrs. Turner finished, Emily felt another sharp throb in her belly. Not a contraction, something else. Something warning her that Aaron's distance was not an accident, but a choice. And far away, in an office she had never seen, the choices Aaron made on nights like this were pulling him further from her than ever before. Aaron's heart slammed against his ribs the moment the bar door opened. He hadn't expected this noise, this heat, this rush of luxury wrapped in dim lights and polished marble. The private bar belonged to Mr. Dalton, his boss and the man who ruled his career like a king. Tonight, Dalton had summoned him personally. That alone was enough to make Aaron feel his pulse in his throat, but intensity struck the moment his eyes landed on her, Sabrina Hayes, the woman every employee whispered about, the one who could make Dalton's anger soften with a tilt of her head, the one who closed deals by simply walking into a room. She sat beside Dalton at the long bar, her posture confident, her smile slow and dangerous. Sabrina's presence hit Aaron like a wave, sharp, bold, and impossible to ignore. "Aaron," Dalton said, lifting his glass. "Good, sit." Aaron obeyed immediately, sliding onto the stool opposite Sabrina. His palms were already sweating. Sabrina leaned in before he even settled. "Rough week?" she asked, her voice smooth as velvet. Her perfume, subtle, floral, expensive, wrapped around him. Her hand reached for his, guiding it gently onto the bar. Her fingers lingered. Every part of the moment was wrong, and every part of it pulled him in. Dalton watched with the expression of a man who enjoyed testing people. "You're ambitious, Aaron. That's why I like you." Sabrina took a slow sip of her drink, eyes fixed on Aaron over the rim of her glass. "An ambition," she said softly, "needs the right company." Aaron's jaw tightened. He thought of Emily, sweet, patient Emily, waiting at home with dinner going cold. He thought of their cramped apartment, the stress in her eyes, the baby coming soon. He should have thought of love, but instead he thought of pressure. He thought of the promotion Dalton had hinted at in the lounge. He thought of the folder with new position papers that he had taken home and signed without reading every page, just grateful for the raise. Sabrina tapped a manicured nail on the bar. "You seem nervous." Aaron cleared his throat. "It's just a lot. New responsibilities. Dalton's expectations." Dalton chuckled. "Responsibilities can lift you up or drown you. Depends on what you hold on to." The words sliced deeper than they should have. Aaron took a shaky breath. "I only want to prove myself. For my family, too." Sabrina turned fully toward him. Her posture changed. More intimate, more intentional. "Then stop acting like someone afraid of wanting more?" He stared at her, confused. "What do you mean?" She leaned closer, her lips near his ear. "Men with families move slower. Men with attachments hesitate." Attachments, the word echoed. In one swift moment, everything inside Aaron twisted. His pride, his fear, his insecurity. He felt small and average and behind in life. Sabrina's voice kept feeding that part of him. "You deserve to be around people who can elevate you," she whispered. Dalton smirked, watching the scene with satisfaction. He knew Sabrina's purpose. She was his favorite because she could read people and reach their weak points with surgical precision. She turned Aaron's hand gently, lifting it palm up, inspecting him as if reading something written on his skin. Then her eyes dropped, straight to his wedding ring. "Ah," she said softly, her tone shifting. "So that's why you look so conflicted." Aaron instinctively pulled his hand back a little, but she held it just long enough to make the message clear. She wasn't intimidated by it. Dalton swirled his drink. "Some women elevate men," he said casually. "Others drag them down. They keep them small, dependent, ordinary." The words landed like a stone inside Aaron's chest. He heard them. He absorbed them. He let them settle into his thoughts where they took root like poison. Sabrina's fingers brushed the ring again. "You should take that off," she murmured, voice low and dangerous. "At least when you're here, it sends the wrong signal." Aaron's breath froze. She smiled, a slow, tempting smile. "If you want to sit with us, if you want Dalton to trust you, if you want to live in his world, you can't keep acting like you still live in hers." His hand trembled. Very slowly, he slid the ring off his finger and slipped it into his pocket. He told himself it was just for tonight, that it didn't mean anything, that Emily would never know. Dalton lifted his glass again. "That's better." And far away, in a small apartment filled with cold food and lonely silence, Emily shifted in her sleep, one hand resting on her belly. She didn't know why, but she woke up with a faint ache beneath her ribs, a warning she couldn't explain, a warning that something inside her husband had just shifted in a way she might not recognize anymore. The door slammed open with such force that Emily flinched, nearly dropping the glass of water she was holding. Her breath caught. Her heart stumbled. For one brief, foolish moment, she thought Aaron had come home worried about her, but the look on his face crushed that hope instantly. Aaron stood in the doorway, shoulders stiff, eyes cold, jaw locked like he had already decided something before he walked in. His movements were sharp, too sharp, like a man who had reached a conclusion he didn't want questioned. He didn't ask if she was okay. He didn't look at her belly. He didn't greet her at all. He simply walked past her, grabbed his suitcase from under the bed, and opened it. Emily blinked. "Hey, Aaron, what's wrong? Why are you packing?" He didn't answer immediately. He folded his shirts with mechanical precision, avoiding eye contact. The intensity in the room thickened until her throat tightened with dread. Finally, he muttered, "I'm moving in with Mr. Dalton." Emily stared at him, stunned. "Moving in? Why? What happened?" Aaron zipped the suitcase halfway and straightened, his expression cold and distant. "Work. The new position. Dalton wants me close to the house for a while. There's a guest room. It's part of the job." Her voice broke. "But I'm about to give birth. You haven't been home." He cut her off with a sharp exhale. "Emily, please don't make this harder. This is temporary. Dalton said if I commit fully now, it'll pay off later. For both of us." Temporary. He said it so casually, as if leaving his 9-month pregnant wife alone was nothing more than a short business trip. Emily stepped closer, hand trembling against her belly. "Aaron, I need you. The baby could come any day. You promised you'd be here. We planned this together. You said—" He looked annoyed. "You'll be fine. Mrs. Turner checks on you. You're strong. You've handled everything so far." Her chest tightened as if someone squeezed the air out of her. That wasn't a compliment. It was an excuse. He wasn't staying because he didn't want to. Aaron grabbed his wallet from the dresser, pulling out the debit card linked to his new salary account, the one he had quietly shifted most of their money into. Emily reached out instinctively. "Wait, why are you taking that? I need groceries. The doctor's appointment." "It's better if I manage the finances," he snapped. "I can't have you spending without thinking right now. I'll transfer something next week if I can." Her hand fell, her heart dropping with it. She had always been careful with money. She had stretched every paycheck. She had let her own small savings disappear first when she stopped working. Yet now he acted like she was some kind of burden. He shoved the card into his pocket and slung the suitcase over his shoulder. "If I impress Mr. Dalton, we'll finally be somebody. Don't you want that?" Emily stared at him, horrified. "I never wanted someone important. I wanted you." He didn't flinch. He didn't soften. Instead, he walked past her toward the door. That was when she smelled it, faint but undeniable. A scent that wasn't hers, perfume, floral, sweet. The same perfume lingering on Sabrina Hayes' skin the night he had come home late from drinks with the team, and she'd seen the name Sabrina flash on his phone before he tilted it away. Emily froze, the world spinning slightly. Sabrina. That woman had been too close, too confident, too connected to Mr. Dalton, and now too present on her husband's clothes. Emily's voice trembled. "Aaron, why do you smell like perfume?" He stiffened for a split second, but he recovered quickly. "Sabrina hugged everyone when Dalton gave the team speech." He lied smoothly. "You're imagining things. You're stressed." She wasn't, but she was too heartbroken, too overwhelmed, too pregnant to fight the way she wanted to. She pressed a hand to her head to stop it from spinning. Aaron placed his hand on the doorknob. "You'll be fine," he repeated. "There's still some food from Mrs. Turner. I'll send money when I can. Just trust me on this, okay? Don't call Dalton. Don't make this look messy." Her voice rose in panic. "No, Aaron, don't go. Please don't leave me alone like this. I feel strange. I think—" But he was already stepping out, already pulling away as if nothing she said could reach him. Emily's throat tightened painfully. She stumbled after him, gripping the doorframe. "Aaron, I think the baby is coming soon." He didn't turn. He didn't pause. He pretended not to hear. The door closed with a final, hollow thud that echoed through the apartment like a goodbye she never wanted. Emily stood frozen, her hands still outstretched toward the empty hallway. Her heart felt like it cracked in two, and the apartment suddenly felt colder, darker, smaller. Her breath hitched as another tightening pulse rolled through her stomach. Not quite a contraction, not yet, but close, too close. And as she leaned against the wall, trying to steady herself, a quiet realization whispered through her mind, one she didn't want to accept. The real danger wasn't the baby coming early. It was what Aaron was about to do next. Far away from home, in a house where Sabrina's perfume and Dalton's promises would wrap around him while she fought to survive alone. The hunger hit her like a punch. Emily clutched the edge of the kitchen counter as her knees nearly buckled. A wave of dizziness crashed over her so hard that spots filled her vision. Her breath trembled, her heart thudded weakly, and a cold sweat broke across her forehead. She had felt tired before, but this was different. This felt like her body was giving up. She forced herself upright, one hand on her belly, the other bracing against the counter. The fridge door hung open beside her, the inside light glowing over shelves that were completely empty. Not a drop of milk, not a slice of bread, not even leftovers. She had stretched what little food she had for days. First her own savings, then the groceries Mrs. Turner brought, then the last can of soup she'd watered down to make it stretch for 2 days. She had eaten smaller and smaller portions so the baby could have enough. But tonight, there was nothing left. Aaron hadn't transferred the money he promised. The card he took was still with him. Her message asking, "Did the transfer go through?" sat on, seen, unanswered. Her stomach twisted painfully. To stop the nausea, she dragged herself to the sink and filled a glass with tap water. The cold liquid soothed her throat but did nothing for the heaviness in her limbs. She drank another glass, and another. Finally, she slid into a chair, holding her belly as if her arms alone could protect the life inside her. Her mind drifted unwillingly into the past. She saw herself standing in the grand dining hall of her childhood home, marble floors and chandelier crystals sparkling around her. There had always been more food than anyone could eat, buffets of dishes lined up for business dinners and charity events. Yet she had eaten most of her meals alone, taking her plate to a quiet corner because her parents were always hosting or in meetings. She had been 22 the day she told them she was leaving the Hawthorne family estate, leaving the private drivers, the gated security, the generational wealth, leaving a life most people dreamed of. Her parents had stared at her as if she'd announced she was disappearing off the earth. "Emily," her mother had said, voice sharp with fear, "that boy is not ready for the burden of a powerful family." Her father had added, "He'll break under pressure. He already looks like he's struggling with his own." But Emily had been in love. She had seen Aaron's smiles, his warmth, his humble dreams, and she believed he loved her for who she truly was, not the name she carried. So she walked away, from money, from power, from every safety net. She even insisted her trust be locked, refusing an emergency card because she wanted to stand on her own. She thought love would be enough. But tonight, sitting alone with a pounding headache in an empty fridge, she felt the weight of that decision crushing her from inside out. A sharp pain hit her abdomen. She gasped and bent forward, gripping the table. "Please," she whispered, tears forming. "Not tonight. Not like this." The apartment felt colder, quieter, smaller. Emily tried to stand, but her legs trembled beneath her. She made it 2 steps before her vision blurred again. Her hand slipped from the table. The dizziness returned like a dark wave. Her phone vibrated on the counter. Her own phone. The one she had stubbornly refused to change so her parents wouldn't easily reach her. Now it lay just out of reach. She took one more step. Then her knees gave out. Her body hit the floor with a dull thud. Her head struck the tile. The phone slipped from the counter, crashing beside her. The screen cracked instantly, lines spreading like a spiderweb across the glass. Emily blinked, barely conscious. Her breathing slowed. Her hand reached weakly toward the phone, touching it with the tips of her fingers before her arm fell limp beside her. The phone buzzed again. The cracked screen flickered, glitching. The damaged interface auto-accepted the incoming call. A name appeared faintly through the fractured glass. "Mother," a soft rustling sound came from the phone's speaker. Then a woman's voice, elegant, concerned, and unmistakably familiar, filled the quiet apartment. "Emily? Emily, are you there?" Emily couldn't respond. She was too weak. fading in and out of awareness. Her mother's voice grew sharper. "Emily, I can hear breathing. Something is wrong." More rustling, a distant command. Voices in the background. Calmer, trained, not surprised by crisis. "Get the security team on this call. Trace the location. Now." Emily's eyes fluttered closed. Her last thought was a mix of fear and relief. Someone knew, someone had heard, someone was coming, and far away, in a control room that had quietly monitored her number for years without interfering, Catherine Hawthorne was already mobilizing the power Emily had tried to leave behind. Emily woke with a gasp. Her eyes flew open, heart racing, breath sharp and frantic. For a second, she didn't know where she was. The ceiling above her was unfamiliar, white, high, decorated with soft recessed lights. The sheets beneath her felt too smooth, too clean, too expensive to belong to any place she could afford. Then she heard it. "Emily?" A woman's voice, soft, trembling, afraid. Emily turned her head slowly. Her mother, Catherine Hawthorne, elegant, poised, always perfectly composed, sat at her side. But today her mother didn't look composed at all. Her eyes were wet, her hair slightly undone, her expression raw with fear and guilt. Emily's father, Charles Hawthorne, stood behind her mother, a tall man with a commanding presence and calm authority. His clothes were immaculate, but his face was tight with worry in a way she had never seen growing up. Emily stared at them, confusion swirling through her mind. "Mom? Dad?" Her mother reached forward, taking Emily's cold hand in her warm grip. "Oh, sweetheart. Finally. You're awake." Emily tried to sit up, but her body ached everywhere. Her mother pressed gently on her shoulder. "Don't push yourself. You're safe. You're in a private hospital suite. The baby is still okay. You collapsed from malnutrition and exhaustion. Private suite, perfect linens, silent machines, security outside the door." This was Hawthorne money, money she had refused for years. Emily blinked through the fog in her mind. "How did you find me?" Her father answered, voice steady but soft. "Your phone answered by accident. We heard you collapse. Our security team traced the call and sent medics immediately. You've been here since last night." Emily swallowed. "I didn't want to worry you." Her mother gave a choked laugh, brushing tears from her cheek. "You could never bother us, but you scared us, Emily. You scared us so much." The intensity of her parents' presence began to soften as Emily processed everything. She looked around the room, flowers, medical staff on standby, her personal nurse outside the door. These people had been waiting for her. Her father pulled a chair closer. "We respected your choice to build your own life," he said. "You asked us to stop calling. You changed your name. We tried not to interfere, but we kept a quiet safety net, just enough to find you if something ever went very wrong." Emily froze. "You watched me," she whispered. "Only from a distance," her mother said softly. "No cameras, no spies in your apartment, just your phone number, your city, and a team instructed to stay back unless there was an emergency." Emily's chest tightened. All those years she thought she was completely alone. She wasn't. Not completely. But another thought slipped into her mind like a cold shadow. "Aaron. What about—" Emily's voice cracked before she could finish. Her mother's expression changed instantly. The softness vanished, replaced by a cold, razor-sharp fury. "We know." Her father reached into his coat pocket and placed a tablet on Emily's lap. "You deserve to see what he has been doing." Emily hesitated. Her hands trembled as she tapped the screen. The first photo appeared. Her stomach dropped. Aaron, at a restaurant. Sabrina Hayes on his lap, her arm draped over his shoulders, his face close to hers, laughing, relaxed, comfortable, as if he belonged there, as if he hadn't abandoned Emily, as if he wasn't married, as if he didn't have a baby coming any day. Emily's vision blurred. She blinked hard, but the images stayed. More photos came. Him at Dalton's private club, him leaning close to Sabrina, him leaving with her in a luxury car. Some images were old, taken weeks ago. Others were from just days before he walked out with his suitcase. "Once we got the call from your phone," her father said quietly, I told our investigator to pull every piece of data he already had and to dig deeper. We had looked into Aaron lightly when you first married him, just for your safety, but we never found anything we could use. Now we have more than enough." Her mother's hand tightened on her arm. "He left you starving while he pretended to be a single man." Emily lowered the tablet slowly, her heart heavy. Her father's voice dropped into a tone she remembered from years of business negotiations. Calm, lethal, final. "He will face consequences. He will understand who he chose to underestimate." Emily felt a tremor in her chest. Not fear, something else, something awakening. Her mother leaned in close, her voice steady but furious. "We'll handle him, but first, let's get you justice." Emily closed her eyes for a moment, letting the words sink deep into her bones. Justice. After everything she had endured, after being abandoned in her most vulnerable moment. Slowly she exhaled. When she opened her eyes again, something had changed inside her. Her father tapped the tablet again. "There's more you need to see." Emily looked down. Another file was opening. Messages, receipts, location logs, bank transfers. Evidence. Evidence that would shake her world and Aaron's. And far beyond the hospital walls, in boardrooms and offices where Leonard Dalton once felt untouchable, the name Hawthorne was about to force open doors he thought would never turn against him. The conference room door burst open, making Emily flinch even from her hospital bed. 3 men in dark suits carrying thick folders and digital tablets entered with a level of urgency she had only ever seen in emergency rooms or crisis meetings on the news. Her father followed behind them, his expression sharp. No longer the worried parent from before, but the powerful executive the world feared. Charles Hawthorne had activated his legal division, and when the Hawthornes moved, the world usually shook. "Everyone, start," he said. The men spread documents across the table near the foot of Emily's bed. Screens lit up, files opened. Evidence spilled out like a silent storm. Emily's heart raced. She felt intensity fill the room like electricity. One man stepped closer and introduced himself. "Mrs. Parker, I'm Daniel Reese, head investigator for Hawthorne Legal." His tone was respectful but firm. "We're going to walk you through everything we've uncovered so far. You can stop us anytime." Daniel placed the first stack of papers in front of her. Bank statements, withdrawals she never approved, transfers to restaurants she never visited, charges made on nights Aaron claimed to be working late. Emily blinked slowly, absorbing each detail. The numbers blurred for a moment, then sharpened. Her father whispered, "Take your time, but know that we are here now. You're not facing this alone anymore." The tension eased slightly inside her. For a moment, Emily let herself breathe, but only for a moment. Daniel slid over a tablet. "Next, we have digital evidence. We also extracted data from the company phone your husband left at the apartment," he added. "Its messages and call logs confirmed his late-night meetings with Dalton Circle and his pattern of ignoring you while he was out." The screen showed footage from the security cameras in her apartment building's hallway, footage the Hawthorne team had legally obtained from the building management. Emily watched in silence as Aaron slipped in and out at odd hours, sometimes alone, sometimes clearly tipsy, sometimes returning in clothes that didn't match the time he said he left. Her stomach twisted. Her mother placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "He was living a double life, sweetheart, and he wasn't even careful." Emily swallowed hard. "I didn't know. I didn't want to think." Daniel shook his head. "You weren't supposed to know. That's how manipulation works." One of the other investigators stepped forward. "Mrs. Parker, there's more. Your husband also accessed a loan without your consent. He forged your digital signature using your full name and copied handwriting." Emily felt the air leave her lungs. "He forged my name?" The man nodded grimly. "Yes, we have copies of the application, plus metadata from the financial institution. The funds went into an account he opened recently under just his name." Her father clenched his jaw. "Corporate misconduct, abuse of power, fraud, all tied to Dalton Circle." Daniel tapped another file. "Your father's company specializes in exposing corporate offenders. What Aaron did is illegal, but what Dalton did is worse. We recovered text messages between them." Emily stared at the growing mountain of evidence. It felt surreal, like she was watching a documentary about someone else's life. She lifted her hand, fingers trembling, and whispered, "Don't destroy him. Let him destroy himself." The room went silent. Her father met her eyes, the eyes of the daughter he had once struggled to understand, and nodded with solemn respect. "Then we will proceed your way. Quiet, precise, controlled." Emily looked at her mother, who squeezed her hand gently. "We'll follow your lead." The intensity softened as the room shifted into reflection. Emily's mind drifted back to the earliest days with Aaron, the man who had once held her during thunderstorms, who had whispered promises about a simple, loving future. She had been blind to the cracks forming in him, blind to the insecurity that grew every time he looked at men with more power, more money, more life than he thought he had. She remembered how he used to trace circles on her hand before falling asleep, how he had told her he wanted to be her safe place. But instead, she had become the stepping stone he stood on to climb towards someone else's world. Emily exhaled slowly. "We'll gather everything, every document, every message, every lie." Daniel nodded. "We already are." He tapped his folder. "And we found something today that changes everything." Emily looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" He opened a file filled with scanned pages, legal documents with familiar handwriting. "Aaron signed contracts under Dalton's pressure," Daniel said, "contracts that put him in direct violation of multiple laws. Dalton used him as the front man for certain funds. If those funds are investigated, and they will be, Aaron's name is on everything." Emily's eyes widened slightly. "He didn't read the fine print," the investigator continued. "Dalton tricked him, used him, and now we can use this in court and publicly. Dalton's empire will crack from the inside." Emily's heart thudded. Her father crossed his arms slowly, voice deep. "Dalton thought he could manipulate your husband, but he never imagined Aaron would lead us straight to him." Daniel hesitated for a beat, then turned another page. "There's one more document we found, forged, hidden, dangerous." Emily's breath caught. "Dangerous how?" Daniel slid the final page toward her. It was a spousal consent form, her name printed neatly on the line, her signature faked beneath it. The form attempted to list Aaron as co-beneficiary to any future inheritance that might come from family trusts, even though her trust had been locked for years. "He doesn't understand how your trust is structured," Daniel said quietly. "He clearly suspected there might be some inheritance or family money you were hiding from him, but he had no idea of its real size or conditions. This form is legally useless, but it proves intent. He was willing to use your identity to reach whatever he thought you had." Emily felt a cold ripple travel through her body. Whatever they were about to show the world would change not just Aaron's life, but Dalton's as well. And long after she left this hospital, what happened in the courtroom could follow Aaron for the rest of his days. Weeks later, the courtroom felt like it might explode. Voices clashed in the air, reporters murmuring, chairs sliding, spectators whispering like they were watching the climax of a drama come to life. The tension was so sharp it stung. Security guards lined the walls. Cameras flashed. Once the press learned that the Hawthorne family was backing a case against businessman Leonard Dalton and an ex-employee, the room became a storm. Every eye was fixed on one man, Aaron Parker. His shirt clung to him with sweat. His breathing was fast and uneven. His hands shook so badly that he struggled to keep them still on the defense table. For weeks he had been riding high, living with his boss, chasing status, pretending to be powerful. Now, under the unforgiving lights of the courtroom, he looked small, lost, exposed. The judge banged the gavel. "Court is now in session." Aaron flinched. Across the room, Emily entered through the side door, calm, composed, elegant in a simple dress. Her belly was smaller now. She had given birth days earlier under her family's protection. Her mother pushed the stroller behind her, their newborn son sleeping peacefully. A wave of whispers spread. "She looks so strong. Is that her baby? He abandoned her while she was pregnant, right? The Hawthorns are here. This is serious." Emily took her seat without looking at Aaron. Her expression was steady, serene. It wasn't anger that filled her presence. It was dignity, quiet, unbroken strength, and that terrified Aaron more than rage ever could. The judge turned toward the attorneys. Today we are hearing the petition for divorce, custody arrangements, and presenting preliminary evidence related to alleged financial misconduct and identity fraud. We will review evidence submitted by the Hawthorne legal team. Daniel Reese, the lead investigator, stepped forward. Calm, precise, deadly. He clicked the first slide. Hospital records. The courtroom gasped. The screen displayed medical notes in bold. Patient severely malnourished, signs of dehydration, pregnancy at risk, emergency intervention required. Emily kept her gaze forward. Her mother squeezed her shoulder gently. Aaron's face turned pale. Next slide. Financial statements. The documents clearly showed that Aaron drained joint accounts, withdrew funds without permission, and used money meant for groceries to wine and dine his boss and Sabrina. The judge frowned. Mr. Parker, do you deny any of this? Aaron swallowed hard. I was under pressure. I thought I could fix it later. I didn't realize, but his voice broke under the weight of his own choices. More evidence appeared. Security footage from the apartment building hallway, Aaron entering at 2 a.m., clothes disheveled, receipts for luxury meals, hotel records booked under business travel, screenshots of messages between Sabrina and Aaron, flirtatious, bold, shameless. Aaron squeezed his eyes shut. It wasn't what it looks like. I was just... The judge cut him off. Save it for your attorney. Daniel clicked again. Loan documents appeared, forms showing a loan taken in Emily's name, approved with a forged digital signature. And this, Daniel said calmly, is the loan Mrs. Parker never consented to. Her signature has been confirmed as forged. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Lastly, he put up the spousal consent form. This document tried to list Mr. Parker as co-beneficiary to an inheritance he incorrectly believed Mrs. Parker still controlled. Again, the signature is forged, legally worthless but revealing. The judge's expression hardened. Mr. Parker, your actions show a pattern of deception and financial abuse toward your wife, but the worst was still to come. The judge nodded to the bailiff. Bring in Mr. Dalton. Aaron's head jerked up. His boss, Leonard Dalton, entered the courtroom escorted by 2 officers. His expression was sour, irritated, but he kept his composure. He had been subpoenaed after Hawthorne investigators uncovered financial crimes, linking him to shell accounts and illegal transfers. Dalton took the stand. Mr. Dalton, Daniel began, did you pressure Aaron Parker to distance himself from his pregnant wife? Dalton shifted, jaw tight. I advised him to focus on his career. Did you encourage him to abandon his home to live closer to you? A pause. Dalton's eyes flicked to Aaron, cold, emotionless. Aaron stared back with a mixture of desperation and betrayal. Yes, Dalton said finally. He wanted advancement. I told him he couldn't rise with distractions. Gasps echoed. Emily closed her eyes briefly, steadying her breath. Her father leaned closer. This is the truth coming to light, Emily. Let it happen. Dalton continued. He told me he was willing to sacrifice anything, even his marriage. Aaron's head snapped toward him. What? You said? Dalton ignored him completely. The judge slammed the gavel. Order. Daniel stepped back. Your Honor, we rest our case for today. The courtroom fell into thick silence. Aaron trembled in his seat, his life falling apart piece by piece. The mistress he chased wasn't here. Her lawyer had kept her far away. His boss had thrown him under the bus. The world he wanted to join had spit him out without hesitation. Meanwhile, Emily sat with calm grace, her breathing slow, her posture steady. She looked like the very image of strength, of a woman who had risen above betrayal with dignity instead of rage. The judge turned toward her. His voice softened. Mrs. Parker, he said, before I finalize the dissolution of this marriage, grant you full custody and issue recommendations for further criminal proceedings? Do you wish to say anything? Energy rippled through the room. Aaron's eyes widened. He needed her. He needed her to defend him, to say something that would save him, to soften the verdict. Emily stood slowly. She turned to face him. Her gaze met his, a quiet storm, a depth he had never bothered to understand. Her lips parted as if she would speak, but she said nothing. Silence, a silence heavier than any accusation, a silence that changed everything. The judge watched her, waiting, and for the first time Aaron realized heartbreak didn't always scream. Sometimes it looked like peace, sometimes it looked like goodbye. Emily inhaled slowly, and the courtroom leaned forward as if the world had stopped to hear her next breath. Aaron burst out of the courthouse doors as if his lungs were collapsing. "Emily! Emily, wait! Please!" His voice cracked with panic, desperation, and a grief he had never prepared for. People in the courthouse entrance turned to stare. Some whispered. Others shook their heads. Cameras flashed, catching every broken step he took as he stumbled toward the woman he once vowed to protect. Emily stood at the bottom of the courthouse steps, calm as morning light. She held her newborn son against her chest, his small head tucked under her chin. Her mother stood beside her, one hand on the stroller, her father behind her like a silent wall of support. The judge had just granted Emily full custody and put strict conditions on any possible future contact Aaron might have with the child. Conditions based on therapy, restitution, and proven change. A restraining order protected her for now. Emily didn't turn when Aaron shouted again. "You were supposed to wait for me," he cried, stumbling down the steps. "I was doing this for us." Emily stopped walking. Slowly she turned around. The baby slept peacefully in her arms. Her eyes were, however, calm, clear, and unshakable, held no softness for Aaron anymore. Only truth. "No," she said gently. "You did it for you." Aaron froze, tears pooling. "Emily, I made mistakes, but I can fix this. I'll change. I'll get help. You already made your choice," she said softly, "and now you get to keep everything you chose." Her words hit him harder than the judge's rulings, harder than Dalton's betrayal, harder than losing his job, his reputation, and his freedom to move as he pleased. Aaron took 2 steps closer before Charles Hawthorne stepped forward, his presence alone stopping Aaron in place. "You will not approach my daughter," he said calmly, power humming beneath every word. Aaron's breath shook. "Please. I just need to hold my son. Just once." Catherine stepped closer, her gaze colder than winter. "You lost that right long before today. The court made its decision based on your actions. You don't get to erase what you did by crying on the steps." Aaron broke. The weight of it all hit him at once. His legs trembled. He fell to his knees on the courthouse steps. Emily watched him quietly. Not with hate, not with anger, just truth. "You didn't lose us today," she said gently. "You lost us the moment you walked out and left me to starve while carrying your child." Aaron covered his face with his hands as sobs tore out of him. The photographer nearby captured the moment. A man ruined not by enemies, but by his own choices. Emily inhaled slowly, shifted her newborn gently, and turned away. Her mother reached for her arm. "Come home, sweetheart." Emily nodded. For the first time since she left the Hawthorne estate years ago, the word home didn't feel like a cage. It felt like peace. It felt like safety. It felt like beginning again. A sleek black limousine pulled up to the curb, doors opened by uniformed drivers who bowed slightly out of respect. Aaron's head snapped up when he heard the door open. "No, Emily, please." His voice was barely a whisper now. "Don't leave me. Don't take him away." Emily paused at the open car door. She looked back one last time. "You left yourself," she said quietly. "All I'm doing now is finally walking away." She stepped into the limousine. Her parents followed, her mother carrying the diaper bag, her father giving Aaron one last look that made his blood run cold. As the door closed gently behind Emily, Catherine leaned closer to her daughter, her voice soft but sharp. "That man never knew who our daughter really was." Emily looked out the window, calm and steady. "He never cared to know," she whispered. The chauffeur closed the final door. The limousine pulled away from the courthouse, leaving Aaron on his knees, tears staining the concrete, watching the life he destroyed disappear through tinted glass. He would remember this day forever, not as the day he was punished, but as the day he finally understood the price of choosing ambition over love. The limousine glided down the street, carrying Emily into a new life, stronger, wiser, and finally free. The baby stirred against her chest, letting out a tiny sound. Emily smiled softly. A new chapter had begun. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next video. Unaware his wife secretly built a $150 million empire. Husband slapped her at family dinner for serving his food. Late, what she did next left them with nothing. He didn't just disrespect her. He did it in his parents' dining room, with every chair filled, every plate still warm, and every pair of eyes pretending not to see. Mark Walker leaned back in his seat like a king waiting to be served, grabbed his wife's wrist when his plate arrived a few seconds later than he wanted and in front of his entire family. He slapped her. The room froze. Forks stopped midair. No one defended her. No one even breathed. Emily Walker kept her gaze low, hiding the sting on her cheek and the quiet shift happening behind her eyes. To them, she was the polite wife who always helped, always apologized, always stayed soft. Someone with nothing important going on. Someone who didn't have a voice. What Mark didn't know was this. The woman he struck had spent years building something powerful in the dark. Every morning before the sun rose, every night after he fell asleep, Emily was quietly constructing a tech empire under her maiden name. Through carefully built trusts, she owned investment accounts, assets and properties. Even the house whose mortgage he still bragged about handling, even though the payments quietly left her accounts every month. And she had just closed a funding deal that placed her company's valuation at a staggering $150 million. While Mark mocked her little hobbies, she was the one signing investor contracts. While he sent money to another woman from the joint card he thought he controlled, that money came from accounts she secretly funded and monitored, and the night he chose to humiliate her in front of everyone was the night she stopped protecting him. This isn't just a story about a slap at dinner. It's about what happens when a man mistreats a woman he never bothered to understand and discovers too late that the ground beneath his feet was hers all along. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you're watching without subscribing, it's like letting Emily's strength be ignored the way they ignored her at that table. When you click that button, you stand with every quiet soul who was underestimated, dismissed, or silenced, and still rose higher than anyone expected. Please subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Emily Hayes Walker woke up with a sharp gasp, as if her mind had already been running long before her body caught up. She wasn't startled by danger. She was startled by ideas, complex ones, urgent ones, the kind that snapped her awake at 5:12 every morning. For a moment, the room looked still, peaceful, and warm. But inside her head, numbers raced, strategies formed, and decisions waited. She sat up slowly, brushing her long hair away from her face. 36 years old, quiet by nature, and soft-spoken around everyone but the people she trusted. On the outside, she was an ordinary wife, but beneath that calm, she carried a sharp mind shaped by years of preparation and quiet discipline. Emily swung her legs over the bed and reached for the slim silver laptop hidden beneath the nightstand. She didn't hide it from fear. She hid it from misunderstanding. Her husband, Mark Walker, 40 years old, liked to believe he understood everything happening in his home. But this was her world, a world he never truly noticed. The screen lit her face in a cool glow. Not social media, not shopping, charts, curves, market signals, equity projections. Early morning messages from investors in different time zones. Every morning, she checked the pulse of the company she built brick by brick, Hayes Tech, the quiet startup she had incorporated under her maiden name 3 years earlier. A company Mark had never asked about, never cared to understand, and never realized even existed. In his mind, if he ever thought about it at all, it was just some online work, like the freelance job she once did to help with bills. But her story didn't start in this marriage. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, and a memory pulled her backward. She was 10, sitting at a kitchen table with her father, an accountant with tired eyes but a patient smile. He slid a notebook toward her. "Number," he told her, tapping the page, "will take you anywhere if you respect them." She remembered copying columns, learning balance sheets, practicing how money moved. Her father never had much, but he gave her something more powerful than wealth: skill, confidence, understanding. Another memory flashed in. 17-year-old Emily in the library, stacking thick finance books, reading until her eyes burned. Teachers thought she was studying for a test. She wasn't. She was studying for her life. Years later, in her 20s, a friend from graduate school, Sarah Collins, the woman who later became her lawyer, laughed across a cafe table and said, "Emily, you should start your own fund. You think like a founder." Emily had smiled politely, hiding a dream she wasn't ready to show the world. She didn't have support then. She didn't have trust, but she had knowledge. She had vision, and that was enough. Back in the present, the faint hum of the bedroom air vent blended with the soft tapping of her keys as she scanned the growth chart of her newest project. She paused, eyes narrowing. One upward spike looked sharper than expected. A good sign. A very good sign. She leaned closer, then froze. Footsteps. Her heartbeat slowed, not because she was doing anything wrong, but because she knew what came next. Confusion, questions she didn't feel like answering, and a dismissive shrug that always followed. Mark Walker pushed the bedroom door open with the casual confidence of a man who believed the world always waited on him. Once athletic, now slightly soft around the edges, he carried himself as if nothing in life required improvement. Not even him. He rubbed his eyes. "You're up early again?" Emily closed the laptop with one smooth motion, careful not to look rushed. "Couldn't sleep." Mark moved around the room without noticing the tension in the air. He never noticed much. Emily had been married to him for nearly 9 years, and in all that time, he'd never asked about her private goals. He saw her as reliable, gentle, supportive, which she was. But he mistook those things for smallness. "Hey," he said, pointing at her closed laptop, "what are you always working on so early?" The question wasn't curiosity, it was annoyance. A habit. Something he asked the way others asked about the weather, never waiting for an answer. He had already decided it was some boring side work that didn't really matter. Emily smiled softly, the way she always did when she didn't feel understood. "Just something I'm building." He nodded without interest, already looking for his phone, his socks, breakfast, always expecting her to fill the spaces he left empty. He didn't ask another question. He didn't lean closer. He didn't wonder what she meant. He simply moved on. Emily watched him walk out the bedroom door, and something in her chest tightened. Not with fear, not with anger, but with knowledge. He would never ask again. He didn't care enough to. She reopened her laptop once he disappeared down the hall. The screen's glow returned, lighting her face with determination. Her company was growing faster than expected. Opportunities were coming, wealth was rising, and Mark, he was drifting further and further away from the truth. Far below the rising chart line, a small red calendar icon blinked quietly on the corner of her screen. A reminder she hadn't opened yet. Family dinner, Sunday 6 p.m., Helen's house, sent to her and Mark by his mother a week earlier. Emily hovered her mouse over it and hesitated. Work, family, secrets, all of it pressing closer together. A subtle sign that something in her world, outside the laptop, was about to shift. The sharp crash of a cabinet slamming open cut through the kitchen like an alarm. Mark Walker stood there in the doorway, jaw tight, irritation already raging across his face, as if he'd woken up searching for something to be angry about. "What is this?" he snapped, holding up a plate. "Grease. You didn't rinse it right." His voice hit the room before his presence did. That was how he always entered. Loud first, human second. Emily, still in her soft morning clothes, turned slowly from the sink. The shock of his tone hit her, but she kept her face calm. She always kept her face calm. "It's clean, Mark. Maybe the lighting—" He cut her off with a scoff. "It's not clean. Never mind, I'll do it myself." He wouldn't. He never did. But the plate slammed into the sink anyway. The intensity of the moment hung in the air, sharp and unfair. Then, like a wave pulling back, everything softened into a quieter tension. Emily lowered her eyes not out of fear, but to gather herself. She had grown used to this version of him, short-tempered, dismissive, easily offended. Years ago, he hadn't been like this. Or maybe she just hadn't seen it clearly. Love had a way of making harsh edges look rounded. She wiped her hands on a towel and stepped back. Mark's mother, Helen Walker, 64 years old with a voice that could slice stone, entered from the living room. She had let herself in early that morning with the spare key she insisted on having, saying she wanted to help Emily keep the house in order. She was the kind of woman who believed tradition was scripture, and any woman who challenged it was rebellious. What did she do now? Helen asked, as if trouble followed Emily everywhere, instead of the other way around. Mark replied, "The usual. She doesn't pay attention." Helen's eyes landed on Emily. "A woman's place," she said slowly, "is making the home peaceful. Men deal with enough outside. They shouldn't come home to disorder." Emily felt the words hit her like small stones. She swallowed, quietly, gracefully, because giving them nothing was the only way to protect herself. "I understand," she said, though she understood much more than they believed. She turned back to the sink, moving with steady calm. While they complained loudly, she softened her breathing and centered herself. This was a practiced skill, protecting her mind from chaos around her. But beneath her quiet surface, something simmered. Not anger, not yet. Something closer to recognition. A flash of memory rose inside her with sharp clarity. Years ago, right after Mark lost his job at the sales firm that once paid most of their visible bills, he had spiraled into long days on the couch and long nights blaming the industry, the market, and anyone but himself. During that time, Emily took remote work editing financial documents, balancing books for small businesses, and tutoring online. She worked quietly, often into early morning, earning enough to keep their bills paid when his severance ran out. She remembered sitting at the same kitchen table, eyes burning from lack of sleep, when Mark passed by her without looking up from his phone. "You should sleep earlier," he said. "No thank you, no appreciation, just criticism." And she had swallowed that too. Back in the present, the house felt smaller than ever. Mark's footsteps thudded down the hall as he searched for his keys. Helen muttered something about women these days. Emily inhaled deeply, exhaled quietly. She didn't defend herself. She didn't argue. She didn't break. Instead, she reached for her phone on the counter, if only to distract her mind for a moment. A message preview popped onto the screen, not for her phone, but for Mark's. His device sat charging nearby, unlocked for once. Emily hadn't planned to look at it. She hadn't even meant to glance. But the words in the preview flashed bright. "Are you coming over tonight? She won't know." Emily's breath stilled in her throat. Her hand froze midair. She didn't open the phone. She didn't touch it. She didn't gasp or whip around or let pain show. She simply blinked once, slow, controlled. Then she set her own phone down, picked up a dish towel, and kept working. Her mind didn't scream. It organized. Quietly, carefully, she stored those 8 little words deep in her memory, in the same mental drawer where she kept every hurt, every pattern, every sign she once excused. Behind her, Mark walked back into the kitchen. "Did you hear me?" he asked sharply. Emily looked up, calm as still water. "Yes, Mark." He didn't notice a thing, not the shift in her eyes, not the silence turning heavy. As he turned away, Emily's gaze drifted back to his phone, still glowing, still unlocked, still whispering truths he didn't think she would ever see. Just before the screen went dark, another notification pulsed gently, a small calendar reminder he had set for dinner, 8 p.m., with no details and no invite sent to her. She wasn't supposed to see that either, but she did, and she would remember both. The night the truth finally snapped into place began with a violent burst of sound. Emily's laptop vibrating against the wooden desk as a flood of notifications hit all at once. The sudden noise cut through the quiet house like a warning. It was near midnight, the walls still, the air heavy, and Mark asleep in the next room after another evening of dismissive comments and unexplained absences. Emily steadied the laptop with one hand, heart racing not from fear but from urgency. Numbers were moving fast, and decisions had to be made. The intensity of the moment pressed against her chest, then slowly softened, shifting into calm, deep focus. She inhaled deeply and leaned forward, letting the familiar glow of the screen pull her into the world she had built in secret, her empire. Piece by piece, memory by memory, the path unfolded inside her mind. The beginning had been nothing glamorous. It started 3 years earlier, on another exhausting night, when Mark had been sitting in the living room playing games late into the night. He had lost his job then, laid off after ignoring warnings about performance, and instead of using the time to rebuild, he drowned himself in entertainment. Emily remembered him shouting at the game, laughing with strangers online through his headset, while she sat at the kitchen table beside piles of unpaid bills. That night, frustration became inspiration. She opened her old notes, ideas she'd sketched since her early 20s, scribbled between shifts, saved on scraps of paper. Ideas she never believed she had time or strength to pursue. But watching Mark waste his nights while she carried the weight of their life pushed her off the edge of hesitation. She whispered to herself, "If no one is going to build our future, I will." And she began. The second memory arrived like a soft but firm touch. Sarah Collins, the lawyer friend from her graduate days, sitting across from her in a quiet cafe. Sarah was smart, sharp-tongued, and fiercely loyal. When Emily told her she was thinking of starting a business, Sarah didn't laugh. She leaned in and said, "Then let's do it right." Sarah guided her through every step, an LLC under Emily's maiden name. Hayes, a trust that protected the company assets under her sole control. Silent partners who believed in her idea, but stayed off the paperwork by choice. A parent company structure that separated personal life from business life entirely, so that anything built from her skills stayed legally hers. Sarah warned her gently, "This is clean, legal, and strong, but Mark won't understand the separation. Keep your documents safe and don't mix his name into the business." Emily had nodded, remembering how Mark reacted to anything he didn't control, with irritation and accusations. The structure was set. All she had to do now was build. The next memory rose like warm firelight. Emily spent endless nights teaching herself how to code simple prototypes. She watched tutorials until dawn. She sketched designs across notebook pages. She tested ideas again and again, chasing the one that could grow. She had always been brilliant. Her father knew it, Sarah knew it, but Mark had never looked deeply enough to see it. When the prototype gained traction, she pitched it quietly to early investors through private online meetings. She met them while Mark was at the gym pretending to network, or in the hours he spent gaming and scrolling through his phone. Mark never noticed because he never paid attention to the world outside himself. He would walk past her late at night and ask, "Are you really still doing that hobby?" She would smile softly and say yes. While forms for seed funding were open on the screen, he never bothered to look at. Slowly, painfully, steadily, she climbed from idea to product, from product to company, from company to something far bigger than she ever imagined. She hired a small early team, brought in an advisor or two, formed a board, and still came home to cook dinner as if nothing had changed. Back in the present, Emily stared at the latest message flashing across her screen. A notification from her board. Series C funding approved. The number beside it made her breath catch. Valuation now, $150 million. Her hand rose to her mouth, covering the small breath of disbelief. Not shock. She had worked for this. But the reality of it still pressed against her chest like a weight she wasn't ready to set down. She glanced toward the dark hallway. Mark was asleep, unaware that the woman he ignored, criticized and underestimated, had just become the owner of a rapidly growing empire. She didn't need applause. She didn't need validation. But she felt something stir inside her, something steady and powerful, a quiet understanding that life was changing faster than he realized. She closed the laptop carefully, the light fading into darkness. For a moment, she sat in silence, letting the truth settle into her bones. Then her phone buzzed, one soft vibration. She expected another business alert. It wasn't. It was a message from an unknown contact, a name she recognized from Mark's phone earlier. Lily. Attached to it was a simple line. "Don't forget tomorrow night. Same restaurant, 8 p.m. She still has no idea. A reminder about a dinner invitation she was never told about. But that was already booked on Mark's secret calendar. The shouting hit Emily like a slap of cold air the moment she stepped into the hallway. Mark's voice, sharp, irritated, and too loud, cut through the stillness of the house with unexpected force. "No, I told you not to call me right now," he barked. The tone was too urgent, too angry, too personal. Emily froze beside the wall, heart thudding as Mark stormed through the back door and stepped outside into the yard. He slammed it behind him, making the glass rattle. She could still hear his muffled voice on the other side, rising and falling in the sharp rhythm of a man arguing with someone he shouldn't be arguing with. The intensity of his anger pressed into the room, then slowly softened into a quieter, colder unease. Emily stood completely still, her breath thinning into a slow, controlled pattern. She didn't need to hear the words. She didn't need to confirm the suspicion. The tone alone spoke volumes. She turned away from the door, her chest tightening as she walked back toward the living room. Her mind replayed the message she saw earlier. She won't know. Now the voice outside connected the dots she had tried to ignore. She sat on the sofa, hands resting gently on her knees, forcing herself to breathe in and out, deep and steady, the way she always did when life tried to break her spirit. After a few minutes, Mark walked back inside, face turned away as he slipped his phone into his pocket. He didn't look guilty. He didn't look nervous. He looked careless. "Who was that?" Emily asked softly, keeping her tone level. "Work," Mark replied too quickly. "Stressful stuff. You wouldn't understand." He kissed her forehead out of habit, not affection, then moved toward the bedroom. Emily watched him walk away, a strange numbness settling over her. She didn't confront him. She didn't ask again. She didn't raise her voice. Confrontation never opened truth with Mark. It only opened anger. Later that evening, while doing laundry, her fingers grazed the collar of his shirt. Something smudged against her thumb, a faint, rosy line. Lipstick. Not her shade. Too bright. Too bold. She stared at it until her heartbeat steadied again. Then she folded the shirt neatly, placing it exactly where he expected it to be. She never let him see the alarm in her mind. She moved carefully like someone handling thin glass. Emily walked to her office and opened her laptop, not for work, but from instinct. She navigated to the joint financial account she maintained for household expenses. It was nearly empty. Again, she scrolled deeper. She knew the pattern by now. Every month, she quietly transferred part of her consulting income and business distributions into that joint account so the bills would never bounce, letting Mark believe the money came from his past savings or old contacts. This time, several small transfers over the past 2 months caught her eye. Not large enough to attract attention, not large enough to seem suspicious to someone careless, but large enough for her to feel the truth in her bones. They were sent to a woman named Lily Adams. The name meant nothing to her until it suddenly meant everything. Emily didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She simply took a screenshot, saved it to a hidden folder, then closed the laptop gently. Her hands were steady, but her spirit felt heavier than it had in years. She reached for her phone and dialed Sarah Collins, her lawyer and oldest friend, someone who knew Emily's mind better than anyone. Sarah answered on the second ring, bright and awake as always. "Emily, everything okay?" Emily hesitated. Not long, just long enough for the weight of the moment to land. "If I needed to protect myself," she said quietly, "hypothetically, how fast can assets be frozen or protected so no one else can drain them?" There was no confusion in Sarah's silence, only concern. "Emily," she said slowly, voice firm. "What happened?" Emily closed her eyes. "Just answer me." Sarah exhaled. "For accounts in your name and the business, I can send instructions tonight. Within 2 hours, no one but you will be able to move real money. Joint accounts that you fund can be shifted under your control too, but only if you say so. 2 hours. Enough time to lock down everything that was truly hers. More than enough time to change her entire life." Emily whispered, "Thank you," then hung up before her voice could crack. She stared at the dark screen of her phone, fingers curling slightly. A quiet certainty settled inside her, a shift so subtle she barely felt it, but strong enough to change everything. In the distance, through the thin walls of the house, Mark's ringtone buzzed again. Softer this time, with a name she wasn't supposed to know blinking against the dark. Lily. A name she would hear again soon, at a dinner she never agreed to attend. 2 evenings later, the scream of Mark's name tore through the hallway the moment Emily stepped into his parents' home. His mother's sharp voice carried all the way from the dining room. "Mark, tell her the food is getting cold." The intensity hit Emily like a hot wave. She hadn't even taken off her coat. She hadn't had a moment to breathe after the investor follow-up call that ran over time. The one where her board discussed next steps now that the company was officially valued at $150 million. She stood frozen for half a second near the front door, laptop bag hanging from her shoulder, heart still racing from numbers, projections, deadlines. But it didn't matter why she was late. Not here. Not to them. She walked into the dining room trying to steady her breath. The room smelled of baked dishes and heavy spices, the air thick with voices and opinions that belonged to everyone but her. Mark Walker sat at the head of the table, already eating bread, leaning back like a man entertaining an audience. His father and mother sat on either side. His sister, Marcia, 32, always comparing, always judging, smirked when she saw Emily walk in. "You're late," Mark said loudly as if announcing a crime. "We've been waiting." "I'm sorry," Emily replied softly. "My meeting ran—" "No one cares about that," Marcia interrupted. "We're all busy." Emily didn't respond. She walked into the kitchen, set her laptop bag down where no one would notice it, and began preparing plates. She moved quickly, carefully. She had done this before. Too many times. She carried the plates to the dining room. Everyone received their food. Everyone except Mark. She had saved his plate for last because he always expected it warmest and freshest, and she had learned not to argue with that. But the delay was only seconds. Still, as she reached his side, he set his jaw and stiffened. His eyes, cold, irritated, followed her hand placing the plate in front of him. Then his fingers closed around her wrist. The grip was hard, sharp, a sudden shock of pressure. "What is this?" he hissed. "Everyone else has been eating. Why am I last?" His parents looked down at their plates. Marcia sipped her drink. No one said a word. Because this wasn't new. They had seen smaller versions of this, moments where Mark snapped, grabbed her arm, raised his voice. They never intervened. They called it stress or bad days or how men are. Emily opened her mouth to speak, but before words formed, his hand moved faster. The slap struck her cheek with a crack that sliced through the room. Her head jerked to the side. Time stopped. The shock was complete and cold. The kind that didn't burn, it froze. Mark's mother gasped softly but didn't stand. His father's eyes darted to the table. Marcia looked uncomfortable but silent, pressing her lips together as if silence could erase what she had witnessed. Emily touched her cheek, feeling the heat rise under her palm. But she didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She didn't break. Instead, she lifted her chin slightly, turned her face back toward him, and met his eyes with a calm so unnatural it unnerved even him. "Thank you," she whispered, voice steady. "I needed that." The room fell into a strange, suffocating silence. Mark blinked, uncertain for the first time. "What?" Emily pulled her wrist from his grip gently, not forcefully, as if his strength no longer mattered. His mother leaned forward. "Emily, dear, maybe sit down." Emily ignored her. She reached for the nearest glass of water, took a slow sip, set it down, and then walked to the empty chair opposite Mark. Her movements were measured, almost graceful. Not a single tear touched her eyes. Inside her chest, something seismic shifted. Not anger, not sadness. A door closing. And once it closed, it would never open again. She sat quietly while the family began to eat again. Awkward, unsettled, pretending everything would be normal if they just didn't acknowledge the moment. Under the table, her hands were steady. Her breathing was slow. Her mind was turning gears she had kept locked away for years. Legal structures, account controls, passwords, steps she and Sarah had mapped out long ago, just in case. She looked at Mark again, not with love or fear, but with clarity. He didn't notice. He didn't even look at her. But if he had, he would have seen it. Eyes no longer filled with patience. Eyes no longer waiting for change. Eyes that had finally decided. And as she stood to collect empty plates later, something shimmering caught her eye on the table. Mark's phone screen lighting up. A message preview changed everything. Dinner tonight? Same place. She won't suspect a thing. Same number. Same Lily. Emily's hand paused midair, steady but frozen. And without moving her lips, she thought, not yet, but soon. The front door slammed behind Emily with a force she didn't plan, the sound echoing through the empty house like a warning. Her breath shook in her chest, not from fear, not from pain, but from something sharper, something clean, something final. Her cheek still burned from the slap, the red mark fading slowly, but the memory of it felt carved deeper than skin. Her fingers hovered near her face, not to touch the pain, but to remind herself that it happened, that it was real, that a line had been crossed so clearly that she no longer needed to pretend. The intensity pulsed through the room for a moment, hot, fierce, electric, before settling into a cold, focused calm. She slipped off her coat and walked straight to the study, every step measured. No trembling, no hesitation. The soft click of her heels on the hardwood floor became a countdown. She reached the old wooden desk tucked against the wall. It looked ordinary from the outside, but Emily knew better. She knelt down, reached beneath it, and pulled forward a small metal box with a lock on the front. The box was her real heartbeat. She unlocked it with a tiny silver key she kept behind a frame photo. Inside the box lay everything she had ever built: trust certificates, company ownership documents, password logs, beneficiary forms, power of attorney letters, backup drives of her entire startup, the entire skeleton of her empire. This wasn't new. She had opened this box many times before for updates or quiet checks, but tonight felt different. Tonight felt like purpose. She spread the documents across the table, the papers crisp, clean, protected. They looked nothing like the life she lived outside this room. Here the truth was written clearly. Emily Hayes owned everything. Mark Walker owned nothing that he hadn't been allowed to use. Her hands didn't shake as she reached for her phone. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she always trusted. Sarah Collins, her lawyer, her friend, the woman who helped her set the foundation years ago. Emily hit call. Sarah answered almost instantly. Emily? There was no small talk, no breathing room. Emily's voice came out quiet but firm. Activate everything we planned. A pause. Concern. Understanding. Sarah didn't ask why. She didn't need to. She had heard the shift in Emily's tone years ago when Emily first started building her safety nets. Just in case. Sarah exhaled and replied, On it. I'll start the asset protection steps now. No questions, no hesitation, just two words that turned the wheels of destruction. Emily ended the call and sat down slowly. Time felt thick as she watched the next steps unfold. Her laptop chimed repeatedly, each sound marking a part of her life locking into place. A silent montage began. Passwords changed. Emergency protocols triggered. Bank accounts under her maiden name secured with new authentication. Joint accounts she funded moved under restricted status pending separation. Property trust records opened on her screen, confirming her as the sole legal owner from the very beginning. Business shares checked and confirmed under protected trusts. Digital signatures finalizing that she alone controlled the company and all voting rights. The family phone plan, registered in her name, adjusted so only her line remained active. The house around her remained quiet. Quiet like deep water hiding dangerous depth. Quiet like the moment before a storm fully breaks. Emily leaned back in her chair, the soft glow of the screen lighting her calm expression. The part of her that once waited for love, patience, or understanding no longer existed. Only clarity remained. Meanwhile, across town, Mark sat on the edge of a couch at one of his friends' houses, scrolling through his phone without a thought in the world. He smirked at messages he shouldn't be reading, planning things he shouldn't be planning. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced down, his eyebrows pulled together. A notification glowed on the screen from his banking app. Your online access has been temporarily suspended. Please contact your bank. He stared at it, confused, tapping the screen again. And again. And again. Nothing changed. He frowned deeper, annoyance rising, but not fear. Not yet. Mark had never imagined a world where he wasn't in control. He looked around the room, irritated at the inconvenience. He had no idea the storm had already started. And somewhere in Emily's house, another silent alert blinked softly on her screen. A new digital folder opened in Sarah's secure portal with 3 words at the top. Emily Hayes, divorce. The first crack in Mark's world hit with brutal force the next afternoon. The gas station lights flickered overhead as he slid his card into the pump. The machine beeped once, then again. Then the screen flashed a bold, sharp message that punched straight into his chest. Declined. Not once. 3 times. Try again, Mark muttered to himself, jaw tightening. He slammed the card in harder, as if aggression could fix numbers. Again. Declined. A man at the next pump glanced over. Mark turned away quickly, pretending he was checking something on his phone, but a rush of heat climbed up his neck. Embarrassment, confusion, annoyance. He yanked his phone out to transfer money. The screen lit up. Before going black, he frowned and pressed the power button. Nothing. Then he looked up at the corner of the phone screen. No service, no bars, no data. His entire plan shut off. What the? He stepped back, trying to breathe, trying to understand. Intensity surged through him. His words came fast. Why is everything not working? But the chaos inside him slowly slid into cold confusion as he walked inside the station and paid with cash. He had enough for fuel, but barely. He drove off trying to calm himself, telling himself it was a glitch. That's all. A glitch. But the world didn't agree. Hours later, he pulled into the driveway of the home he believed he paid for. He opened the mailbox out of habit and froze. A thick envelope from the bank and mortgage servicer sat at the top. He tore it open, expecting an apology, an update, an explanation. Instead, property ownership and mortgage summary. Registered owner, Hayes Family Trust. Beneficiary, Emily Hayes Walker. Occupant on file, Mark Walker, non-owner. He stood completely still, the air leaving his lungs. What? His voice cracked. He read it again, then again. His name, listed only as occupant. Her name, appearing everywhere else. His head spun. Heat surged up his spine. He crushed the letter in his fist. He stormed inside, chest heaving. Emily was at the stove, stirring vegetables in a pan, her movements calm and steady as if the world was perfectly normal. Her back was relaxed, her breathing smooth. She didn't look shaken. She didn't look frantic. She looked peaceful. Mark froze in the doorway, anger twisting across his face. Emily, all my accounts, my cards, my phone, everything is freezing. My mother just called. The transfer she was expecting bounced, and the bank told her the source account is restricted. What is happening? Emily didn't turn around. She lowered the heat on the stove, lifted the pan, and slid the vegetables onto a plate. Only then did she speak, but her voice was calm, too calm. Everything you're losing, she said gently, was never yours to begin with. You just spent it. The words sank into the room like ice. Mark blinked. His anger stuttered. What are you talking about? Emily placed the plate on the counter, wiped her hands, and finally turned to face him. Her face was soft, unbothered, almost serene. You never built any of it, she said. You only used it. He stepped closer, breath sharp. Emily, don't play games. I need answers. Right now. She tilted her head slightly. I gave you answers. Then she walked past him, calm as a drifting tide. Mark felt something shift in the air as she passed. A cold truth he didn't yet understand, but would feel soon enough. Don't walk away from me, he demanded. Emily paused for only a second. Then don't pretend you ever looked toward me. Then she disappeared down the hallway. Mark stood in the kitchen, fists tight, breathing fast. He felt something cracking inside him, a rising panic he didn't know how to control. Then a sharp knock cut through the house. Knock, knock, knock. Mark jerked toward the front door. A sheriff stood outside, uniform crisp, expression unreadable. He held a white envelope in his hand. Mark Walker? The sheriff asked. Mark stiffened. Yes? The sheriff extended the envelope. This is for you. You've been formally served. Mark tore it open, breath shaking. His eyes widened as he read the title across the top. Notice of divorce proceedings filed by Emily Hayes Walker. The paper trembled in his hand. His voice cracked. No, she wouldn't. From the hallway, unseen by him, Emily watched. Calm, still. Her eyes did not flinch. And in the distance, another silent step of her plan clicked into place. A court date already scheduled for weeks ahead. Weeks later, the courtroom exploded with noise the moment the bailiff called, "All rise!" Chairs scraped, voices hushed, and Mark Walker's pulse hammered against his ribs. The air felt too tight, too sharp, as if the walls themselves were judging him. He stood stiffly beside his attorney, sweat breaking across his forehead. His eyes darted around the room, searching for control he no longer possessed. Every second felt like someone squeezing a fist around his throat. And then Emily entered. The noise dropped instantly. She walked in with quiet confidence. Simple clothes, calm face, steady pace. There was no anger in her eyes, no fear, no hesitation. She looked like a woman who had accepted the end long before this moment. By her side was Sarah Collins, her lawyer and closest friend. Smart, sharp, mid-30s, known in several legal circles for being unshakable. Sarah carried a stack of folders and a laptop bag that was far heavier in meaning than weight. Emily took her seat with perfect composure. The intensity of the room swelled, then softened into tense silence as the judge entered. Everyone sat. The case began. Sarah stood first. "Your Honor, today we will present evidence of Mrs. Walker's financial independence, the separate nature of her assets, and a detailed accounting showing Mr. Walker contributed nothing to the accumulation of that wealth during the marriage." Mark shifted uncomfortably. His attorney, Mr. Davis, whispered, "Stay calm." Emily remained still. Sarah opened the first folder. Inside were copies of company formation documents, LLC certificates, operating agreements, trust records, all under Emily's maiden name, Hayes, dated from before the company ever generated profit, before Mark was involved in anything related to it, and supported by separate bank accounts that never mixed with his. Sarah spoke clearly. "Emily Hayes Walker is the founder and sole owner of Hayes Tech Solutions, currently valued at $150 million. A gasp spread across the courtroom. Mark's stomach dropped so fast he nearly stumbled. He blinked, confused, angry, helpless. She what?" he muttered. Sarah continued, unfazed. "We will also show that all household assets Mr. Walker believed belonged to him were purchased with Mrs. Walker's separate funding through her trust, not from any income of his." She handed the judge a packet of title deeds, each showing Emily's trust in bold as the owner, with records from years ago. The judge scanned them quietly. Sarah pressed on. "Additionally, Your Honor, we will present evidence of Mr. Walker's financial misuse, funds withdrawn from joint accounts for non-marital purposes." Mark's heartbeat exploded in his ears. Non-marital. He knew what that meant. Lily. Sarah connected her laptop to the court monitor. The screen lit up with bank statements, scrolling transfers, digital fingerprints linking Mark to Lily Adams. Mark lunged forward, panic rising. "Wait, this is taken out of context." Sarah didn't even look at him. Next, she displayed screenshots of the messages. "Are you coming tonight?" "She won't know." "I need you more than her." Mark's face drained of color. Those aren't..." Sarah spoke peacefully. "The phone records came from his unlocked device, Your Honor, and the account from which he sent the money was funded entirely by Mrs. Walker's separate income." Emily didn't turn toward Mark. She didn't glare. She didn't smirk. She simply watched the evidence roll out like quiet truth finally given oxygen. Mark's attorney tried to speak. "Your Honor, Mr. Walker disputes the..." But the judge raised a hand. "Mr. Walker, were you aware that your wife funded your entire lifestyle for years?" Mark's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. She's just a housewife," he blurted. A sharp wave of disapproval rippled through the room. Even the bailiff squinted as if the words offended the lighting. Emily looked down, calm, as if she had expected this exact sentence. The judge leaned forward. "That housewife, Mr. Walker, appears, based on the documents before me, to be the sole financial provider in your marriage. Her company and trust were structured and funded as her separate estate, and there is no record of your contribution." Mark felt the room shrinking, trapping him. His chest tightened. "She hid things from me. She tricked me." Sarah cut in immediately. "It is not a trick to build a company while being ignored, Your Honor. She disclosed none of this to him because he never asked, and because the law does not require her to hand over control of separate property to a spouse who does not contribute." "Judge," Enough. Mark clamped his mouth shut, but Sarah wasn't done. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick, heavy folder. Its edges were sharp, its meaning sharper. She handed it directly to Mark's attorney. Mr. Davis frowned as he read the label. Domestically aggressive incidents. Witnesses listed. Mark's heart stopped. His attorney's face went pale. Sarah spoke softly, but every word hit like steel. These are witness statements documenting a pattern of controlling and aggressive behavior toward my client. Emily sat still, eyes lowered. Mark's hand shook as he reached for the folder. Inside were names, dates, short descriptions from neighbors, extended family, and one surprising signature from someone he never expected. Marcia Walker, his own sister. His vision blurred. His world, once loud, confident, arrogant, collapsed into a quiet, cold realization. Emily had walked into this courtroom already 10 steps ahead, and as the judge prepared the final set of questions, something waited behind Sarah's laptop, a piece of evidence not yet revealed, a recording Emily had never shown anyone, not even Sarah. The phone exploded with sound, a non-stop stream of angry buzzing that echoed across the small apartment Lily stayed in. She jumped at the intensity, the vibrations almost rattling the table as Mark's name flashed again and again. "Stop calling me," she hissed under her breath, snatching the phone up. She didn't answer. Not yet. Not until she finished reading the news alert her friend had sent her, the one that froze her stomach and sent a cold wave through her body. High-value divorce case reveals husband lived off wife's fortune. Her heart hit her ribs. Her breath stopped. Mark wasn't rich. He wasn't stable. He wasn't even surviving on his own. He had been living off a woman. And not just any woman, Emily. Lily's hands trembled as she scrolled deeper into the article. Everything Mark told her, the stories of his stress, his responsibility, his supportive role, all lies. The article laid it out clearly. Emily's company, Emily's trust, Emily's house, Mark's misuse of funds. Her phone buzzed again. Mark. She answered this time, voice sharp. "What is this? Why is your name all over the news?" Mark's voice came fast, frantic. "Lily, it's not what it looks like. Emily is lying. She set me up. You know I'm the one who handled things." She stood up straight, jaw tight. "Handled what? You told me you were the provider. You said you were the one building everything." "I was. At least I was supposed to be." "Lily, please, I just need you. I lost access to my accounts, but it's temporary. I'll fix it." "Just stay." "Temporary?" she repeated, bitterness rising. "You can't even pay your phone bill. I had to send you money last week." His silence was loud. Then Lily said the words that cut him deeper than anything Emily had done. "I'm not going down with a man who lied about everything." "Lily, don't do this. Lily." But she ended the call, blocked him. The phone went silent. Images rushed through her mind in a fast, painful flashback. Mark handing her expensive gifts paid for with Emily's money. Mark taking her out to dinners Emily unknowingly funded. Mark promising he'd take care of her soon once his business landed. Mark leaning in close, whispering that she was special, while spending another woman's earnings. The truth tasted bitter. She grabbed her purse, pacing the room. Every step felt like a mix of anger and shame twisting together. Then she stopped, looked at her phone, touched the screen carefully. For a long moment, she hesitated, then typed a message to a number she had never contacted before. She had found it in the article's business section, listed under public contact details for Hayes Tech Solutions. Emily's business line. Her fingers moved with cold clarity as she typed, "I don't want him. You can have this trash back." She pressed send. Across town, Emily sat at her desk, reviewing new legal documents with calm, steady focus. Her phone buzzed once. She glanced down, saw the name, read the message. Her expression didn't change, not even a blink. She quietly set the phone face down and returned to her paperwork. Her voice, low and steady, barely above a whisper. Pieces fall exactly where they belong. And as she turned the page, another silent document waited at the top of the stack. The one that would finalize Mark's removal from the house entirely and give her exclusive right to live there alone. Months after the first court hearing, The shouting hit the front yard before the police car even stopped. Mark's voice tore through the air, wild and desperate, as two officers stepped out and walked toward him. "You can't do this! This is my house, my home!" "No, sir," the lead officer said firmly. "By order of the court, exclusive occupancy of this property belongs to Emily Hayes Walker. You were served notice weeks ago. Today is your removal date." Mark's rage collapsed into panic. "Where am I supposed to go?" he yelled, voice cracking. "This is unfair. She's lying. She planned this." Inside the house, Emily heard every word, but she didn't flinch. She didn't rush to the window. She didn't hide. She simply tied her hair back with a small band, picked up her purse, and stepped into the hallway. The intensity outside was loud, fierce, overwhelming. But inside her chest, everything was calm. The storm had already passed. This was only the cleanup. She opened the door gently. Mark spun toward her, face red, eyes burning. "Emily, tell them to stop. Tell them this house is ours." Her voice was soft, steady. "It was never ours, Mark." Mark stepped closer, but one of the officers held up a hand. Mark froze. Emily's eyes didn't hold anger. They held closure. "You lived here," she said, "but you never saw it. You never cared how it was paid for, or who carried the weight. You just assumed it belonged to you." Mark's breath shook. "I can change. Just let me inside, please." His mother and father, who had come that morning to support him and help him pack a few things, rushed across the yard next, stumbling over themselves to reach her. His mother grabbed Emily's arm. "Emily, sweet girl, listen," she begged. "You don't have to do this. Think about the family." Emily didn't pull away. She didn't argue. She didn't respond at all. Mark's father stepped forward, hands shaking. "We made mistakes. We were hard on you. Don't leave him standing out here like this." Again, Emily stayed silent. She looked at them, then at Mark, with a calmness so complete it silenced every plea. The moment stretched like a thin line, delicate, final. Then she stepped past them. No one stopped her. She walked to her car, slipped into the driver's seat and started the engine. The noise from the yard faded behind the closed doors. Mark shouting her name, his family pleading, officers holding him back as they explained, again, that he had to leave the premises today. She stared straight ahead. A slow breath left her lungs. Then her voice, quiet as a whisper, filled the car, carrying the last truth she would ever give him. "When you treat a woman as if she's nothing, you should pray she actually is." She put the car in drive and pulled away without looking back. Minutes later, she parked in front of a sleek glass building with a large silver logo across the entrance. Hayes Tech Solutions. Her building. Her empire. The world she built while everyone underestimated her. As she stepped out of the car, the atmosphere felt different. Clean, open, full of possibility. Staff members in the lobby straightened when they saw her walking toward the entrance. A young receptionist, new, nervous, but eager, rushed forward with wide eyes. "Good morning, Ms. Hayes," she said, voice full of respect. "Welcome back." Emily smiled faintly, soft, knowing, whole. For the first time in years, she felt like her name fit her again. She walked through the lobby, past glass walls and open offices, each step steady and full of quiet power. She reached the elevator, pressed the button, and waited as the doors slid open with a smooth hum. She entered, turned around, and looked out through the lobby's wide windows. Far beyond the roads, far beyond the traffic, far beyond the noise. Mark Walker sat on the curb outside a house he no longer had a right to enter, head in his hands, life in pieces around him. The elevator doors closed. The world shifted, and Emily Hayes rose. She walked into her top-floor office moments later, the view wide and clear behind her. Her assistant placed a stack of new contracts on her desk. Emily touched the top file, the paper crisp beneath her fingers. A small, quiet smile grew on her lips. Not from revenge, from freedom. A new beginning waited for her, sharp, bright, and open. And just as she prepared to sign the next deal of her life, a soft vibration from her phone lit up the screen. A new opportunity, a new partnership, a new chapter, because her story was far from over. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next video.